May all that you stand for and that we stand for be preserved under the providence of God for the happiness of mankind.
The trouble is caused by unthinking people who carelessly throw away ageless ideals as if they were old and outworn machinery.
But it is the values of individual liberty, equality before the law and the supremacy of people over the state to which we can always with confidence return as a powerful and uniting force.
Australia is not a secular country. It is a free country.
Good evening and welcome to this impromptu live stream. My name is Dave Pello, if you haven't met me before. I'm the editor and founder of the Good Source blog. We do a couple of shows for different independent contributors, but I stumbled across this news article in the Sydney Morning Herald, and I thought I'd just share it with you. Let's read it aloud and reflect on it together. Feel free to join in the comments. Feel free to share this video with some of your friends. Because you're not going to believe this, but the Sydney Morning Herald opinion columnist Nikki Sava seems to think that Scott Morrison is a little bit too conservative for the good of Australia. Well, if you don't believe it, let's have a read of this article together. I might read it beginning to end and then go through it and just have some reflections on it together. So Morrison's strategy is a political masterstroke or moral failure. Well, I couldn't agree anymore. All right, let's not dissect it just yet. No, I'm going to do it as we go. I mean, political masterstroke, conservatives like me, freedom fighters, think this guy is all about political career and has absolutely nothing to do with his convictions or his character whatsoever. If what he deems the polls want him to do happens to coincide with what is the right thing to do, then that's a happy day for Scott Morrison. He does have beliefs and he does have values. And if you don't like those, well, he's got other ones. Just ask him. He will get out of bed, check the polls before deciding what to do today. Have a look at his flip-flopping on mandates. We're going to make it as mandatory as possible. I didn't mean mandatory as possible. I mean, he changes his position. Each way elbow should be his name. But I'm calling him Scotty the Windsock because he just blows wherever a stiff breeze is pointing. And that's the only kind of conviction he's got whatsoever. Well, Nikki Sava writes that any lingering doubts moderate Liberals might have had that Scott Morrison was prepared to sacrifice heartland seats, including Kooyong, held by his treasurer and deputy Josh Frydenberg, to harvest votes in the regions and outer suburbs, have been dispelled. They smelled a rat on Sunday when he pledged to proceed with religious discrimination legislation without simultaneously protecting the rights of LGBTQ students. Little comment. Religious discrimination legislation without simultaneously protecting the rights of LGBTQ students is literally paying Peter to rob Paul. I don't even know if I got that right, but it's giving with one hand and taking from the other. That's exactly what that is. It's absolutely ridiculous. The whole point of the need of religious liberty, which this legislation is going to woefully fail because Scott Morrison has no convictions, is that it's the activists amongst that community which need protection from. And so re-enshrining their right to be activists, you might as well not have the bill in the first place. And he was a fool to have promised that or to even thought that that was possible. Confirmation followed with another, even more robust defence of his chosen candidate for Warringah, Tony Abbott's former seat, Catherine Deves, after her carefully stage-managed retraction of an earlier apology for her allegedly transphobic tweets. And by transphobic, what Nikki Sava means is that she reflected biological reality instead of LGBTQ propaganda. Christopher Hansen is commenting, put the majors last in Australia. Well, I think Scott Morrison's certainly heading for that reality check. Morrison, who had earlier excused Deve's allegedly repugnant assertions on the basis of her apology, now defends her retraction and supports the substance of her claims, undeterred by any mangling of medical or legal facts. The only people, of course, doing any mangling of medical or legal facts are those people who think your feelings determine your gender, and your feelings can change with the breeze or the phases of the moon, and therefore so can your gender. Utterly ridiculous. Angelina Schmidtken does make a great point, Christopher. We do need to keep the true conservatives in seats. If there's 2 of them in the whole nation, if there's 6 of them, 10 of them in the whole nation, feel free to dump the rest, but do keep the good ones. Let's consolidate the ground we've taken and prune the deadwood off the Liberal Party. Albo's already won this. This is a given. He's already won this. Scott Morrison is not on God's side, that's for sure. And so take the opportunity to get rid of your local Liberal MP if they also are on the side of the woketivists, the activists, and spineless cowards who did not defend freedom. Yeah, and Judy B also says, beware the climate 200, not so independent independents. Obviously, just because someone claims to be independent doesn't mean they're independent. Likewise, Jackie Lambie claimed to be a good fit for the United Australia Party and was an absolute wolf in sheep's clothing. So don't just look at the party brand. Make sure you look at the people from good parties who are not good people. And that's the same. Vote for people, not parties. Hashtag people, not parties. Senior Liberals fear Morrison has deliberately sealed the fate of a clutch of moderates already struggling to survive, thanks to the poor handling of the challenge from women independents as well as from Labor in inner urban seats, which now threatens to hollow out the party and could eventually split it in 2. Praise God. That'd be fantastic. But you've got to be kidding if you think that Morrison has it in for the moderates. The moderates are the people who gave him his power, who gave him his position. And you saw the cabinet he chose 3 years ago when he got a miracle election win, that he chose mostly moderates. He is so in favor of those people and has done nothing to raise the career of deserving people who are definitely conservative, like Andrew Hastie. Andrew Hastie has to play it safe if he wants a career because he's not a moderate and he doesn't get that kind of reward. They accused Morrison of abandoning progressive Liberals. Sorry, what? Progressive Liberals? If you're progressive, you shouldn't be a Liberal. Get out of the Liberal Party, go join Labor or the Greens where you belong. You all believe in Keynesian economics, and some of you believe in zero social values whatsoever. So get out of the Liberal Party. It's a broad church for conservatives, classical liberals, libertarians, but people who are not progressive. So Morrison should abandon the progressive Liberals. He should throw them under the bus and kick them out of the party if he's got any sense at all. But trust me, he hasn't abandoned them. That's just what the ABC, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the Guardian think. If Morrison's campaigning to impress the Sydney Morning Herald, he is definitely going to lose this election because they ain't voting for him no matter what. Well, senior Liberals accused him of abandoning progressive Liberals and using Deves to chase conservative Christians or other people of faiths. Now that is true. He is an opportunistic, manipulative marketer who will use emotion and identity politics to try and shore up his support amongst gullible, right-leaning Christians who will vote for somebody simply because they're Christian without knowing anything about them. Well, the days of partisanship are over, my friend. We're not falling for it anymore. We're going to vote for good people and forget about the stupid party labels that are attached to them. Partisanship, whether for minor freedom parties or for major conservative parties, is done and dusted. That day is over. We are going to examine the candidates that you put up. And if they're rubbish, we're going to vote for Labor and get rid of the deadwood in your party. Brian McIntosh says, pray for Morrison to renew his mind. I'll pray for him to renew his mind, all right? He can take all the time he likes to do that in the Centrelink unemployment line. He apparently chased conservative Christians in the same-sex marriage debate in 2017 and again in 2019 when he promoted his religion and refused to condemn Israel Folau's homophobic rants. Well, that's slander because it's not true. in the belief he could break through Labor's red wall in the Hunter or Western Sydney. This is each way ScoMo. Each way ScoMo. Scotty the Windsock. Hashtag Scotty the Windsock. Yeah, he did do a little bit of virtue signaling in the same-sex marriage debate. And sorry about that. Put that on silent. There we go. And what good did it do us? We got a Liberal Party that totally squibbed on religious liberty. They could have put it into the legislation when they enacted it, and they turned down every single amendment that would have done away with the need for a religious liberty legislation. We've been waiting for 6 years for this religious liberty legislation, 5 years, and it's never going to come. The Ruddock Review, Malcolm Turnbull, Scott Morrison, they're all opportunist windsocks who have zero convictions for religious liberty. 18C, Racial Discrimination Act is still in place. There is no freedom of speech. You're not allowed to pray around abortion clinics. There is no religious freedom or political freedom in Australia if you have unapproved opinions. If Israel Folau can lose his job, none of the legislation the coalition government has proposed would protect Israel Folau if the same thing were to happen again. None of it. It's completely useless, and it was all virtue signaling. The guy is not a friend of Christians. Yeah, Angelina says he won't be lining up at Centrelink. He'll be doing very well. Yep, that's true. So anyway, let's keep reading. One Liberal described that as a fantasy, another as treachery. What was the fantasy? That he could break through Labor's red wall. Gotcha. According to 3 New South Wales Liberal sources, Deve's campaign for Warringah is now being run out of the Prime Minister's office, with Morrison's chief political advisor, Yaron Finkelstein, playing a key role. A spokesman for the Prime Minister rejected these claims as completely false. The PMO, Prime Minister's office, is not involved in Ms. Deve's campaign. According to 3 New South Wales Liberal sources, it is. I don't know that I really care. I mean, must-win seats are must-win seats. I guess she cares because she doesn't like somebody who believes boys shouldn't be in girls' change rooms or girls' sporting codes. Yeah. Local Liberals are boycotting her and her campaign, preferring to help. That's across the nation. That's across the whole nation. Local Liberals are boycotting the local campaign. That's certainly in my seat with Bert Van Manen. He's struggling to find volunteers right now. It's ridiculous. And it's the case across everywhere. Everybody's telling me how hard it is for the Liberal Party to find volunteers and donors in this election. Local Liberals are boycotting the Liberal Party. Preferring to help out in other seats like North Sydney, where Trent Zimmerman has been caught in a pincer movement between independent Kylie Tink and Labor's Catherine Renshaw. Well, I really hope Trent Zimmerman is in the battle for his life. That guy's in a really safe seat. And if he's in trouble, then that is good news for Australia. That's good news for the Liberal Party, because if wet, moderate, left progressives like him are in trouble and out of the party, there is a hope that the Liberal Party can be saved in less than a generation. It's going to take a long time to fix them. Normally, when the Liberal Party loses elections, they lose all the Conservatives and they've put all the progressives in the safe Liberal seats. Trent Zimmerman should be in trouble. He is a joke of a Liberal Party member. He definitely should be in the Greens. Zimmerman had earlier called for Deves to be disendorsed. Yeah, well, he would, because he's in the Greens and he wants the Liberal Party to look like the Greens. According to one well-connected Liberal, Deve's Sky interview recanting her apology was set up deliberately to resuscitate the issue with the Prime Minister, banking on getting asked about it at his press conference the next morning, which he was. I haven't got audio shared for this, so I won't play it. I'm absolutely pleased, quote, Morrison saying, I'm absolutely pleased that I've been able to recruit and we've been able to appoint strong female Liberal candidates that won't just run with the pack when it comes to issues, unlike myself. Sorry, I inserted that. He didn't say that. But will actually stand up for what they believe in. That's what being a Liberal is all about. Well, in that case, you shouldn't be in the party, Mr. Morrison. Not everyone agreed. Hateful and hurtful was how one Liberal described it, probably one of the leftist moderates that should be in the Greens. Fearing for the future of the party if Frydenberg lost his seat. The Prime Minister's office says it was unaware of Deave's interview with Sky News until it aired. Another, a former MP, said Morrison's strategy would not only amounted to deliberately sacrificing moderates, but of actively working against fellow Liberals ideologically opposed to him whom he disliked. He described the betrayal of sitting members as an act of treason. No, that would be an act of patriotism. If Scott Morrison got rid of the leftist progressive moderates who have no business being in the Liberal Party, there would actually be a contest between two different parties instead of a race between two identical parties. That would be an act of patriotism, a true opportunity for democracy and choice, an actual liberal concept, a competitive marketplace. That would be fantastic for the nation. The only MP who's going to be saying that is somebody like George Brandis or Christopher Pyne or some other far left radical who should never have been in the Liberal Party. Malcolm Turnbull, no doubt. It is fatuous for Morrison to congratulate himself for choosing Deaves when she makes Craig Kelly, another Morrison's captain pick, look rational after he and his party have so badly mishandled the threat from the Teal independents. I don't know what this author, I don't know who she's trying to, Nikki Sava. Like, are you serious, Nikki? Are you seriously taking yourself seriously right now? I mean, Craig Kelly has been proven right on absolutely every count. That makes Scott Morrison look like a genius, getting him back in. The only reason you're bagging Scott Morrison out so much is because he's not left enough for you. You want him to be a raging lefty like Turnbull, Zimmerman, Pyne, or Brandis. Like, you've got absolutely no idea. And the fact that anybody in the Liberal Party would care what the Sydney Morning Herald would say, or the ABC or the Guardian, is exactly the reason why they're in the problem that they're in. They should care what Liberal voters have to say, and Nikki Savas certainly is not one. It's fatuous for Morrison to congratulate, and after he and his party have so badly mishandled the threat from Teal independents. I don't know what she means by that, mishandled the threat from Teal independents. They're an extremely well-funded, coordinated campaign from extreme leftists to take over leftist seats that aren't leftist enough. The crude political, and good riddance. I mean, what do we need a pretend leftist for? Give us a genuine leftist, then we can elect a genuine conservative after we get rid of the incumbent pretend leftist pretending to be conservative. The crude political tactics, the sledging, the denigration of obviously articulate, accomplished women for daring to challenge the Liberals' best and brightest was manifestation of the sort of behaviour which had alienated those voters in the first place. They have been accused of threatening to wreak havoc on democracy. They are daughters or nieces of Liberal royalty. They are doctors or small business owners, yet they are mocked for allegedly allowing themselves to be manipulated by a male multi-millionaire, Simon Holmes à Court. They've been branded fakes, stooges, and anti-Liberal groupies. Accurate to the T. They faced legal challenges for the great crime of putting up corflutes too soon and even had elderly family members dragged into the political fray. Who cares? If they're playing by the rules, play by the rules. Don't put up your signs early. Follow the rules. And that's why we all need to be volunteering for scrutineering on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, is because you can guarantee the leftists are going to be using the rules to give themselves every advantage possible. They set up the Senate voting system, hoping that right-wing conservatives will only number 6 boxes above the line or 12 boxes beneath the line, which will favour the Greens. This is the rules. This is the system that they've got. Guys, if you're sharing this tonight, use hashtag Scotty the Windsock. Scotty the Windsock. Hashtag Scotty the Windsock. Not Scotty from marketing. This is a guy who's not trying to sell any message. He's just absolutely following whatever way the breeze blows. Labor's internal polling of key marginal seats has confirmed a visceral dislike of Morrison, adding weight to the complaint of moderate Liberals that he is the biggest drag on their vote. For a good reason. He doesn't stand for anything. Although it is high everywhere, his unpopularity soars among women, where his net approval rating is in the -20s. Among men, it is in the -teens. The biggest turnoff nominated by voters is his refusal to accept responsibility, which explains why Labor's "That's Not My Job" ad and Anthony Albanese's use of it in the closing stages of the 9 debate has cut through. Yeah, that's unfortunate because he's been mostly right. There is demarcation of responsibilities between federal, state, and local governments. Bushfires and emergency management is not a federal job. It's a state job. That's absolutely where the premiers should be. And there's nothing at all wrong with Scott Morrison being out of the country while state premiers do their job. That's what the SES is for, the police, the ambulance, the fire, all of those things. Uh, Scott Morrison doesn't hold a hose. That's the actual fact of it. It's a very unfortunate that that's being used against him. But we got to call balls and strikes here, guys. Scott Morrison's an absolute clown. He's a windsock, but he didn't do that wrong. It's exactly right. So what do you expect him to do? Everything? Well, no. That's gross centralization of power. We need the states to be different from the Commonwealth. The further away the seat of power is from the person being controlled, the worse it is for the person being controlled. What would be better for Australia, possibly, would be to get rid of local councils and take us up to 10, 20, 50 states in Australia. That would be fantastic. And the less we can give the federal powers to do, the better. According to one source familiar with the Liberals' internal polling, 70% of Liberal voters defecting to the Teal independents, what were they ever doing with the Liberal Party in the first place, have been driven by their dislike of Scott Morrison. Look, the fact is that the inner city demographics are increasingly becoming Green voters. The Liberal Party trying to retain those seats is insanity because they would have to become Green, which they have done, which is insanity. What they have to focus on is the outer metropolitan areas and the regional areas and represent the real Australians who are not locked into CBD and inner city suburbs. Those are the people who are not latte sipping, greeny four-wheel driving people who've never seen a speck of dust off-road in their life. These are the people who have no idea about the real world and incredibly wealthy. The Labor Party has become the party and the Greens of the inner city elites abandoning workers. And it is the Liberal Party, which should be representing the workers, the middle class people, the aspiring people, and business owners, especially small business owners around the nation. That is where Liberals' actual appeal can be. The primary vote of moderate Liberals in those half a dozen blue ribbon seats, formerly blue ribbon seats, plunged to between the mid-30s and the low 40s. They need to get their primary vote up around 45% to survive. Blessed subtractions. Here's your hat, what's your hurry? Good riddance. Frydenberg's survival strategy is to plaster every piece of available space in his electorate with posters urging voters to keep Josh. There is a near-invisible Liberal logo and no Morrison presence, virtual or actual. In fact, posters featuring Morrison with Liberal candidates are as rare as a Yowie sightings. Quote, people will win in these seats in spite of the Prime Minister, not because of him, end quote, according to one threatened MP, still hopeful he could hang on. As well as Kooyong, Goldstein, Wentworth, McKellar and Curtin under threat from independents, there is an ever-expanding list of prime Liberal real estate tilting to Labor, including Bennelong, Reid, Chisholm, Higgins, Brisbane, Ryan and Leichhardt. Fantastic. Goodbye. And guess what? Every electorate should be decided by the local member, not by the party leader, because party leaders are musical chairs. They come, they go, but the person you're voting for is the person who will cast a vote in Parliament on legislation on your behalf. He's the person you have to hold accountable. Bert Van Manen in my electorate voted for Malcolm Turnbull against Tony Abbott. You're fired. Bert Van Manen in my electorate, Ford, abstained on the marriage vote. Goodbye, you're fired. Absolutely useless. Did not cross the floor to support Craig Kelly's legislation opposing mandates. Goodbye, you're fired. I don't care who your leader is. I don't care how much I like him. You failed me. You're fired. Goodbye. Morrison's political strategy to back Deeves could well be deeply flawed, or it might, like his reluctance to back real wage increases for the poorest Australians, prove to be a masterstroke. If you want to increase real wages, stop inflation. You don't get to control wages. That's what the market decides. I'm the business owner. I get to decide what they're worth based on how much I can make, based on how much I can get somebody else for. If this is just common sense. My accountant employs graduate accountants and has to pay them the minimum wage as a graduate accountant, which is far more than they're actually worth to him as a business. 2 years later, he has to pay them more than the award wage for a second year graduated accountant, because he will lose them to somebody else if he doesn't. This is the real world. If you want to increase people's wages, decrease inflation so that the value of the money in their pocket stays at its value instead of diminishing in value. Inflation is theft, and when you see inflation, it's because the government's been printing money again too much, trying to do everything for us, lying and bribing us, trying to stay in power instead of doing the right thing. Most troubling is the morality of it. It is cruel and reprehensible that such a sensitive matter with the potential to cause grievous harm to vulnerable people, these people are vulnerable because they're sick, not because people call out reality and say, hello, you've got a compound fracture, there's a bone sticking out of your leg. That doesn't hurt you. Your injury is that you've got a compound fracture sticking out of your leg. And it's the same with gender confused and sexually confused people. Honesty is compassion. Patronizing is hate. This matter has been planted in the middle of an election campaign by a flailing, floundering Prime Minister. You know what? This is a good thing to campaign on, because it is a real issue, an actual epidemic in our nation of the people flooding these gender clinics that never were there 10 or 20 years ago. This is an actual epidemic, and it's caused by people like the Sydney Morning Herald patronizing them and telling them that their delusions are reality. If this is the one thing Scott Morrison actually does defend, well, good on him. Even a stopped clock can be right. Look, that's it for, I think, this episode of this nonsense from the Sydney Morning Herald. Thanks for watching. We'll go through some comments in a second, but I just saw this article and I thought I'd just read it out loud and share my thoughts with you spontaneously. Don't really have time to write an article. Trying to get a whole heap of videos produced for you between now and this time next week. Put off voting as long as you can. We've got more information for you, and that'll be a whole lot of fun. Look, if you're going to vote before I can tell you anything else, just do this. Number as many boxes as possible on the Senate ballot, above the line or below the line. Number as many boxes as possible. You have to include the majors somewhere, or you will be giving the Greens a free pass to a Senate ticket. I'm sorry, the chances are not good enough that you can only number 6 or 12 boxes. You have to number every. Look, if your first 6 and 12 votes are enough, fantastic, nothing lost. Then the people you voted 13, 14, 15, 34, 35, 57, 79, those people are never going to see the benefit of your ballot. It's just an insurance policy. What if it's not? What if your ballot is the last one to decide between a major party Conservative or a Greens candidate in the Senate in Australia? You have to keep your voice in that conversation right till the very end. It's just an insurance policy. Do not follow the Greens voting system. Number every box, please, please. All right, let's have a look at some comments. Here we go. Daniel Shepherd says, about my comment earlier about the increase of states would be a better thing than centralizing power just to Canberra. Yes, decentralized power, giving powers to the states, makes it easier to align with the will and needs of the local people and more difficult to remain out of touch. It also creates opportunities for some states to try new policy and others to copy those that work and disregard those that fail. Indeed, Daniel, that's how Australia got rid of death taxes, forcing people to sell farms to pay a 20% share to the government just because granddaddy died. Utterly ridiculous. Queensland led the way in that experiment and boomed and flourished and prospered. Government revenues went up. Imagine that. And all the other states had to copy because they were losing everything. Dan Hillier says Scott Morrison deliberately thwarted Liberal pre-selection processes to appoint his candidates like Zimmerman and Hawke. That's exactly right. He's absolutely got a foot planted on each side of the fence, very heavily leaning toward the moderate progressive left. No friend of conservatives or Christians or libertarians and freedom lovers. This guy is absolutely Scotty the Windsock. What's best for his career? They were expected to face competitive pre-selection challenges from Conservative candidates. ScoMo is no friend of Conservatives. This has upset a lot of Liberal members, and I suspect many of them will vote Teal in protest. Absolutely. Why do you need Trent Zimmerman? 100%. Vote for Teal instead of Trent Zimmerman. I hate the lefties, the greenies. I hate their politics. Jesus loves them. I love them. He says I have to love them. But I hate their politics. Vote them in, because what you're doing is using them like a pair of pruning shears to get rid of the rot, the deadwood, the diseased, damaged branches of the Liberal Party. Get rid of Trent Zimmerman at any cost. Absolutely put Trent Zimmerman at the bottom of your ballot. Absolutely great plan. 3 years later, come back and elect a Conservative from the Liberal Party if they've learnt their lesson. Make sure they all hear you as well. Join the Liberal Party and be part of pre-selecting somebody better 3 years from now, 2 years from now, and actually make a difference. But we have to think about Australia more than 3 days from now. We have to think about Australia 3 years from now. Who's going to be the next candidate? We've done this before. In the seat of Longman, we got rid of progressive left mini Malcolm Turnbull by the name of Wyatt Roy. And now we've got a more conservative Liberal member there. Now, he's not conservative enough. He hasn't crossed the floor in favour of Craig Kelly's vote or other things, made some kind of excuses about it being an own goal or something like that. Utterly ridiculous. Okay, but the point is, we got rid of a progressive and got a conservative. Is he strong enough? No, but that's probably our fault for not giving them enough curry and enough courage to do the right thing. So, guys like him, line call. But Trent Zimmerman, no brainer. See you later. You're fired. Elizabeth Oakman saying great advice, going to share. And that is pretty much the sum of it. Well, guys, my dinner's ready. I am going to sign off. Just thought I'd share that article with you. Make sure you have a great night. Share it. Sign up to the Good Source newsletters. If you want to become a supporter, head to goodsource.news/support. And we have got a great plan for you on election night. Definitely going to have George Christensen here in the studio. Some others as well. We're going to have a team of number counters and researchers and people. We're going to be watching the seats that Freedom candidates possibly can win. We're going to be watching the Teal candidates. We're going to be watching the swinging seats, the ones that always go with government. And we're going to be trying to give you an update to good news, bad news, all the news as soon as we can throughout the night. We might even have a little bit of a barbecue out here for some local campaigners just to watch what's going on. Sounds like fun. Hope you can make it. But don't forget, this is the place to be, the Good Source. And we will be here live on election night and hopefully many times in between now and then. This is Dave Pella. You know what? Better play the outro music as well. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.
Today, we need a special kind of courage. Not the kind needed in battle, but a kind which makes us stand up for everything that we know is right, everything that is true and honest. We need the kind of courage that can withstand the subtle corruption of the cynics, so that we can show the world that we are not afraid of the future.